Early voting for Vermont's primary election, to be held on Tuesday, August 11th, began a few weeks ago on June 29th. That gives the state's voters 45 days to cast a ballot in the primary, and there are several ways to do that before August 11th. All the same absentee ballot options remain. You can go to the town clerk's office and pick one up, or return a postcard you should have received in the mail and request a ballot be mailed to you. Just make sure you mail it in before August 11th if you want to have it counted. Or you can go to mvp.vermont.gov, my voter page, and request a ballot online. The number of early ballots that have been requested this year have shattered all previous records. Some 42,000 have been requested already, compared to about 5,400 in 2016, the last presidential election year. And with the COVID-19 pandemic making voting by going to the polls and casting your ballot the traditional way more problematic because of the social distancing and concerns about potential exposure of poll workers, that number is likely to keep on increasing. Several local communities, such as Manchester and Dorset, have already made plans to have drive-by voting instead of holding elections at the town hall or school gym. With all these changes going on, we talked with Secretary of State Jim Kondos about how that's all being managed. And there's more to follow. The general election in November, a presidential election, will see ballots being mailed directly to you before the election, which you can mail back in. That's the big difference between the general election in November and the primary vote coming in August. Will there be any difference in the voting for the August primary uh, compared to any previous years, or is there some new wrinkle that voters need to be aware of over the next couple of weeks when they're preparing to cast their ballots for the August 11th primary?
The answer is simply that it'll be conducted as it has in the past. The only difference that we've done is that we sent a postcard with a prepaid return card to all active registered voters if they would like to get their ballot by mail. If they would like to have essentially have an absentee ballot sent to them. And we did that statewide. So there's about 480,000 registered voters in the state right now. 450 or what 1,000 are what we consider to be active registered voters, and the other 30,000 are those that the local board of civil authority and town clerks have challenged in one way or another by sending them a letter, and they either did not respond or it was questionable what they responded with. So those folks will get a separate mailing that'll ask them to affirm that they want to be registered, continue being registered to vote, and that this is the address that I live at. So other than that, we're going to see pretty much the same thing for the August primary. And the August primary is August 11th. We obviously started sending out absentee ballots, early ballots. I'm trying to remember. I think it was June 26th, I believe the date was. It was 45 days ahead of time, as is required. Now, interestingly, the August primary, typically on average is between 100 to 120,000 voters that come out, which is about 20 to 25% of the registered voters. And in years past, we've had somewhere between 25 and 30% are voting absentee. Well, we're already past that number. We've already got a significant increase. And I think, Andrew, it's if you look around the country, Wisconsin typically they had a primary about 12 weeks ago. In their primary, they typically have about 100,000 or less people that vote for an absentee ballot or request an absentee ballot. This year they had over 1 million. And I think that the numbers have been proven. I don't have actual numbers. That's the one that sticks in my mind. But if you look at Georgia, Texas, any of these other states, you will find similar type situations. So there's clearly something going on. Obviously, it's called COVID, and that's what we are dealing with. So And to put it in perspective, Andrew, what my office, myself, and my team, what we've been focused on are two goals. One is to protect every Vermonter's right to vote, and two, to protect the health and safety of not only the voter but also the town clerks and the poll workers. Um,
We also had a chance to talk with Sandy Pinsenold, the town clerk of Dorset, who described how things were shaping up on the local level.
If you didn't get the postcard for whatever reason, you can contact your town clerk either by phone, email, or you can go to the state of Vermont's Secretary of State's office website, and under My Voter page, you can request an absentee ballot sent to you for the August primary.
There's been some concerns expressed that expanded mail-in voting opens up the door to increased potential of fraudulent voting. Is that a concern that you share?
I'm not so concerned about well, there is some potential fraud there, because obviously if somebody is not living at that address anymore, like I just had a call this morning, this gentleman got the postcard for somebody that no longer lives at that address. He could have requested that ballot. I would not have known, and he could have filled out that ballot for that person and returned it. To his credit, he called me to tell me that she does no longer live there, and I need to take her off my voter, or challenge her on my voter checklist, because she's not a participant in Dorset. So there is some potential. I think there's a big potential for fraud when it comes to college kids. The ballots, again, could be sent to the home. The parents could vote on them. The kids could be voting at college, wherever they live, go to college. So there's some potential. You'd hope that most people are conscious enough and would not. There has been some in the past in South Burlington I know of, and I believe in the city of Burlington as well. So yeah, so there is a potential there for it. What it does do in the pro of that is it does give everybody the opportunity to vote. So for those people who sometimes normally would not vote, at least it's putting the ballot in their hands to vote. And then that's up to them to decide whether to vote or not. The other thing people need to keep in mind is mailing is no longer an overnight process in the state of Vermont. So if you request that absentee ballot, you need to make sure it gets back to us and has plenty of time to get back to your town clerk prior to the day of election, because we don't count votes after the 7 p.m. on the night of the voting closes. It's done. So if it doesn't get back there, it doesn't count.
Dorset, like Manchester, is also planning to hold drive-by voting in their town hall in East Dorset. Manchester's voters will head to the Rec Park and vote near the Park House there. But the legislation allowing the expanded mail-in voting this year with ballots mailed directly to voters will only apply to this year's election. Whether the state thinks this is an idea worth continuing in future years will require the legislators to revisit and pass a new statute to authorize doing that in the elections to follow. You'll be able to watch the full interview with Secretary of State Kondos elsewhere on GNet's website or on the airwaves. For the GNet TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.